Trump family usually puts out a united front behind Donald Trump. Another member of that family is now publicly breaking ranks. Fred Trump III, the son of Trump's older brother, Fred Trump Jr., and brother of frequent critic Mary Trump, has now come out in support of Kamala Harris. The endorsement comes as Fred Trump releases a new memoir, which has the title, All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. In the book, Fred takes readers behind the scenes of the family dynamic that he says helped create the former president. And Fred joins us now here on set. Good to see you. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Let's just start simply with this. Why now? Why speak out now?
There are two reasons, and we haven't started now. My wife Lisa and I have been advocating for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our young son, William, has complex disabilities. We've been doing so through the legislative and through the executive branch. We have met during Donald's term with cabinet secretaries and a meeting that culminated in May of 2020 in the Oval Office. So we haven't just started. We waited for the book. We wanted to wait for William to become settled in a new home environment. He doesn't live with us now. He lives in a group home. We wanted him to be settled. But we've been thinking about this for a while.
And tell us more about what Donald Trump has said about your son.
Donald has never met William, ever. In fact, no one in the Trump family other than two of my cousins have met William. So when he said what he did to me, when a fund that had been set up for William's health, for his therapeutic needs, and I just want to clear something up. The reason.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're talking about a fund for money. For money. Check it.
A fund existed is because Donald orchestrated a plan set up for William's health, for his therapeutic needs. And I just want to clear something up. The reason a fund existed is because Donald orchestrated a plan to take my sister and me out of my grandfather's inheritance, which went back days after William was released after 7 weeks in hospital. Al, you'll remember that in the city. You have to understand that Donald was my trustee. He was my trustee, which meant he was supposed to protect me and my family. He did the exact opposite. So the fund was my money, but...
Whoa! Did y'all hear that? He was the trustee, and he was supposed to protect him and his family. Oh, my God, that's right. Oh. Yes, he did say that. He said that. He said it.
Ask for it back, which was troubling. So, and my family, he did the exact opposite. So the fund was my money, but I had to ask for it back, which was troubling. So when the fund was running low, I called Donald and I mentioned that. And he said, your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die and move to Florida. Now, I don't know how you can explain that away, the cruelty of that comment. But as you'll read in All in the Family, he had said something very similar in our last Oval Office meeting with a group of advocates. He had called me back into the office when everyone dispersed and said, those people, all those expenses, they should just die. So it's hard to wrap your head around that.
We should note Donald Trump disputes this account. He said that in a statement, I helped him so much more than anyone else in his life. And this is the family, which has the title, All
terrible
in the Family.
This is
you have to understand that Donald was my trustee. He was my trustee, which meant he was supposed to protect me and my family. He did the exact opposite. So the fund was my money, but I had to ask for it back, which was troubling. So when the fund was running low, I called Donald and I mentioned that. And he said, your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die and move to Florida. Now, I don't know how you can explain that away.
That
the cruelty of that comment.
Horrible. That is a cruel, horrible comment to make. That's terrible. Cold.
But as you'll read in All in the Family, he had said something very similar in our last Oval Office meeting with a group of advocates. He had called me back into the office when everyone dispersed and said, those people, all those expenses, they should just die. So it's hard to wrap your head around that.
We should note Donald Trump disputes this account. He said that in a statement, I helped him so much, more than anyone else in his life, and this is the thanks I get. Eric Trump, the president's son, took to Twitter X last night, saying it's disappointing that after decades of unwavering love, support, golf memberships, et cetera, that you have decided to cash in his words, less than
golf memberships. What the? They talk about $1 billion, millions of dollars, billion, however many millions that he's talking about golfing.
100 days. So talk to us about this family dynamic now and respond to what they're saying.
The dynamic started when I was very young, when I was able to grasp it and understand that I am one of the only people that knew Donald in his formative years, through his business career, and during his presidency and after. So I know Donald as well as anybody. My father, his older brother, Freddie, wanted nothing to do with the family business. But my grandfather, who was very tough, wanted him to. My father wanted to be an airline pilot and wound up being an airline pilot in the early 60s. That was quite a feat. But Donald, who was given the path by my father to do what he wanted to do, to run the family business, just demeaned my father for no reason other than his need to feel superior to other people. And that led to issues with my dad, unfortunately. People will say this is like the Succession television show. And I say, no, it really isn't. In Succession, there were 3 siblings that wanted to take over the father's business. My dad wanted no part of it. My dad wanted to be an airline pilot and became that. Again, he gave Donald the path, but Donald crushed him.
Fred, I want to go back to what you were saying about your son and Donald Trump's reaction, because one of the things that strikes me, and as you know, I've known Donald Trump for a while, pro and con relationships, is that the insensitivity that I might have marched on him about in terms of Central Park 5 or something else is one thing, but to be insensitive to his own nephew's condition. And it shows how he feels about people that have situations like what you and your wife are dealing with your son, that he really has no insensitivity toward people that are suffering or find themselves in a different situation, which is scary if you're going to make him president of the United States. Talk about just his lack of humanity and sensitivity.
Well, I was listening to...
And, when this is the man's family, so when you have to ask him that kind of question, and he's just openly so frank about it over the internet, it means it have to be something really deep, behind it. But this is horrible to hear. Very
to the segment before with Senator Kelly in the immigration policy and how Donald and the new Republicans, the Republican Party, which is not the Republican Party I remember, just everybody is a rapist, everybody is a criminal. The way I answer that question is the caregivers that take care of my son, William, are from many of those same countries. They care life. So Donald does not respect people that he deems lesser than him. They care for him every single day of his life. So Donald does not respect people that he deems lesser than him.
Fred, it also is interesting that he doesn't want to be in the presence of people with disabilities. I remember the comments that he made to General Kelly, who was then his chief of staff, that he said nobody wants to see those people. And we were talking about wounded veterans that were going to be on stage, being honored and revered. It is fascinating to me that he would have a nephew that would be severely disabled, that he would never meet him.
Never met him.
And what about Eric? Has Eric met your son?
Eric and Donnie, we invited them to our house many years ago, and they came. And they saw. William is wheelchair bound, needs assistant, everything. He's a wonderful young man.
And I'm sure he's enriched your life.
He is the most courageous and inspirational person I have ever met.
So it's really, and then you look at the evangelical community, and this circles back to you, Rev. I'm pretty sure that Jesus spent a lot of time talking about taking care of the least among us. Right. Can you reconcile in your mind this enthusiasm among evangelical Christians for a man who has advocated killing people, letting them die if they're disabled because he doesn't like the way they look?
I think they have the same end goal in mind, just power and to push their goals. If you don't mind me going back again to Senator Kelly, and I hope this helps answer one of your questions. During the inauguration in 2017, my two older children were with us, and sitting right behind me was Senator McCain. And when the ceremony was over, I brought my kids over and I said, this is a word I don't use very often, kids. Senator McCain is an American hero. And obviously, this is after Donald had said he wasn't a hero, which I think baffles many minds. And the fact that it doesn't disturb a lot of people that he said that goes to your point. It's very, very sad.
Yeah, for people that don't know, John McCain, I believe he was actually a prisoner at one time. Let me look that up real quick, because it's necessary at times. Just to be clear, he's talking about John McCain. Let me see. Was John is it McCain? A prisoner of war. Let me see here. Yeah, he was a POD. He was a prisoner of war. And Donald Trump is talking about him like that. That is very interesting. That's very, very interesting. Let me see something here. Okay, so right. Oh, we're still coming up with info. All right, damn. How come Donald Trump ain't know that?
Yes, John McCain was a prisoner of war. Here are the key details. Capture and imprisonment. Capture. John McCain was captured on October 26, 1967, during the Vietnam War. He was shot down over Hanoi while on a bombing mission. Injury and imprisonment. Upon ejection from his aircraft, McCain fractured both arms and a leg. He was taken as a POW and was held at the notorious Hanoi Hilton prison, among other locations.
What?
Duration. McCain was a prisoner of war for 5.5 years, from 1967 to 1973. Treatment and torture. Torture. McCain was subjected to severe torture and solitary confinement. Despite his injuries, he was beaten and tortured by his captors, who sought to extract military information and force him to make anti-American propaganda statements. Resilience. Despite the opportunity to be released early due to his father's high military rank, Admiral John S. McCain Jr., McCain refused preferential treatment and insisted on adhering to the military code of conduct, which stipulates that POWs should be released in the order they were captured. Release and return. Release. John McCain was released on March 14, 1973, as part of the Paris Peace Accords that ended U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. Return to the U.S. Upon his return to the United States, McCain was celebrated as a war hero and underwent extensive medical treatment and rehabilitation for his injuries. Legacy. Military decorations. For his service and enduring hardship as a POW, McCain received numerous awards, including the Silver Star, Bronze Star, Legion of Merit, Purple Heart, and the Distinguished Flying Cross. Public service. After his military service, McCain embarked on a long political career, serving as a U.S. Senator from Arizona and running for president twice, securing the Republican nomination in 2008. For more detailed accounts of John McCain's experience as a POW, you can refer to his memoirs and various historical sources. Books.
Yeah.
Faith of
Okay.
My Fathers.
Well, there you have it. Yeah, John McCain. He's actually a war hero for people that don't know, for people that didn't know. It's crazy.
Not only did during the 2016 campaign did Donald Trump mock John McCain, but he also mocked a New York Times reporter who had a disability. He did so publicly on stage, made fun of him, and drew cheers and laughs from the crowd.
Yeah, and as Claire was saying, there was the reporting that he didn't want wounded veterans or disabled veterans up on stage with him because he didn't think that it was a very good look for his own political campaigns. Fred, I wanted to ask you if you think you visited the White House several times. You voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016, but you did stay on good terms with your uncle, and you visited the White House several times. The book is titled All in the Family. Do you see this as just a kind of sad breakdown of family relations, or is it something more than that to you?
The family broke down early in my life when, again, my father was going through his issues. He was then deemed pretty much the loser. My father was supposed to be the golden boy. He really was. My father was an incredibly caring and charismatic guy, but circumstances led to his drinking, and in turn, my sister and I have always been deemed basically the second-class citizens of the family. When Donald or the others will say the Trump family, it doesn't include us. And I just don't get that. So yeah, All in the Family is, well, it's an ode to one of my favorite television shows. How you remember? But we're from Queens, so we're tough, and I'm thrilled with my, as someone called it, my nuclear family, my 3 kids and my wife, Lisa. All right.
That's Donald Trump's. Is this his nephew? This is his nephew talking about he has a son that is handicapped, and Donald Trump, says some disparaging words about him. Yeah, so this is a Trump family member.
Former President Trump, Fred Trump III, speaking out against his uncle in a new book. It's called All in the Family, The Trumps and How We Got This Way. And it alleges the former president used a racial slur and suggested disabled people should, quote, just die. The Trump.
But you know what? It's not even news to black folk, because he must have used that word. Of course he must have used that word. That's obvious, right? But really hard to get some reporting on that.
Campaign calls these claims disgusting lies, but his nephew says this is no political hit job. It's the full truth. Here's senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky.
It says the Trumps and how we got this way. What way? What's the Trump way?
Complex and sometimes cruel. And within every family, people know this, families are complicated. Every family has their crazy uncle. My Uncle Donald is atomic crazy. And he has put his mark on the family history.
Atomic crazy?
Yes.
What's that mean?
Means he does.
Damn! Atomic crazy? That's extreme. That's about as extreme as it gets. But what does he mean?
Does things that, even as much as I know him when he's out there now, I sort of shudder and say, is this the same guy I knew? What's making him change? What got him this way? But that all being said, I've always had a good relationship, but he's done really horrific things to me, which some people will say, how could you still want to have a relationship with him? He's my uncle. He's family, and that means a lot.
After his uncle was elected president, Fred Trump says he saw an opportunity to advocate for the disabled.
I was in the Oval Office 12 times, and that was our mission, to advocate for people with complex disabilities. It culminated in May of 2020.
So, did any advocating get done, or what?
In the Oval Office, Donald was there, and he was very gracious. Several other folks were there, including the group that we brought down. We dispersed I was asked to go back and see Donald. He greeted me with his familiar, "Hey, pal, how's it going?" We sat down for a bit. And he just came out with, these people, all the expenses, they should just die. He's talking about human beings who have complex issues. And the first thing he could say was, they should just die.
Fred claims this wasn't isolated, describing a phone call to alert his uncle the medical fund set up by the family for his son William was running low, a fund he says the former president consistently replenished.
A couple of years ago, I called him. I said, "Donald, the fund's running out." And without hesitation, he said, "Your son doesn't recognize you. Let him die and move to Florida."
Were you surprised?
That's a great question. My response was, "No, Donald, he does recognize me," and said, "I'll thanks," and hung up. Was I surprised? I don't think you could hear something like that and not be surprised. But that is what he has become.
That's some incredibly cruel shit.
It's sad.
There's a chapter that you write about called the race card. What's that about?
I was about 10 years old, and I was at my grandparents' house, like I was a lot. And Donald, I could hear him screaming. And I went down to the driveway of my grandparents' house, and there was his white Eldorado convertible with 2 slashes. Still remember it. And he had electrical tape because the roof was black. And he used the N-word twice, just saying who he thought.
That's when I smacked the shit out you. I smacked the shit out. That's when
Comments were allegedly uttered.
Right.
You sure you remember him that way?
Oh, absolutely.
He says he doesn't use the word.
Okay, he did twice that day.
You do write in the book about how people have labeled former President Trump a racist, and some people feel he is, some people say he's not, and you ask the question, is he a racist? You don't necessarily answer it.
Right.
Is he a racist?
He at times espouses things that people who I believe are racist espouses. That's the best I can answer that question.
That's when I smacked the shit out you. I smacked the shit out. That's when
Is a racist. I think that he uses, I don't believe is a racist. I don't believe is a racist.
That's when I smacked the shit out you. I smacked the shit out. That's when
People, whether they're black or they're whoever can help him, he will use them. And, you know, call it racist or not, I don't believe it. When he gets what he needs out of them, votes, he'll cast them aside.
So that is Fred Trump
So
III.
you think you're going to live your life alone, in darkness and seclusion?
We heard at the beginning the Trump campaign is calling the claims in this book disgusting lies, but I would imagine they're saying a lot more than that. What are they saying?
We did get a statement from the Trump campaign which said this is completely fabricated and total fake news of the highest. Appalling, a lie so blatantly disgusting can be printed in media. Anyone who knows President Trump knows he would never use such language, and false stories like this have been thoroughly debunked.
Number of different claims in there, but this book is 300 plus pages. There's a lot in there. Anything else that stood out to you?
Well, look, he does say, and talks a lot about his son, William, his adult son, who does have rather complicated issues. He says that his uncle Donald was responsible for replenishing the fund that pays for his medical bills, and he says this book is about advocacy. He does say it is not meant to be political, although we're less than 100 days from the election. For Kamala Harris.
Okay.
But if his uncle wins, he would attend the inauguration if he's invited.
I don't know that.
That's when I smacked the shit out you. I smacked the shit out. That's when
I was critical of the president back in 2015 and 2016, and he has looked at me as somebody who can contribute meaningfully to the future of the country, so he asked me to be his running mate. 16 to the future of the country, so he asked me to be his running mate. This is not a vengeful guy. The media lies about Donald Trump more than anybody I've ever seen in public life. He's a good grandfather. He's a good father. He likes the American people and loves this country, and this is why he's doing it.
Oh, where to begin? Where to begin? First of all, James David, Donald Trump has got to be rethinking his decision to bring you onto the ticket because, you're just weird, man. Just real talk. Second, not a vengeful guy. His unofficial 2016 campaign slogan was "Lock her up." And third, your evidence that he's not a vengeful guy is that he allegedly is a big family man. Well, about that. A new book today by one of Trump's nephews, Fred Trump III, the son of Trump's late brother, Fred Jr., provides an inside look into the Trump family and the actions of Donald himself that refute JD's claims, including when Donald Trump cut off the medical insurance for Fred's disabled newborn son. That happened after Fred and his sister Mary Trump, who you've no doubt seen on this network and this show, and who wrote her own tell-all book a few years ago, sued their Uncle Donald and their other uncles and aunts when they tried to steal Fred and Mary's inheritance following the death of their grandfather and Donald Trump's father, Fred Sr. Yep, sounds like quite the family guy, that Donald. Joining me now is Fred Trump III, author of All in the Family, The Trumps, and How We Got This Way. Fred, thank you so much for being here. Let me read a little excerpt from your book, and this is the part where Trump responds when it became public that he cut off the medical insurance for your son, for his disabled grandnephew. When the reporter asked if he thought he might be coming across as just a little cold-hearted given our son's medical condition, my uncle shot back, "I can't help that. It's cold when someone sues my father." Is this the way that your uncle always was with your family, or did it change when your son was born and when his parents died?
Donald has always had that streak in him of needing to win at all costs. And when Mary and I challenged him and my aunts and other Uncle Robert, he couldn't accept that. It would have been nice if he was just gracious and said, "Hey, you guys are going through something unimaginable." But he couldn't bring himself to do that. So it's too bad.
Yeah. I've got another excerpt here. This is after an Oval Office meeting with you and advocates for individuals with disabilities and their families. And this is what he said. This is a quote. "Those people," Donald said, trailing off, "the shape they're in, all the expenses, maybe those kinds of people should just die. I truly did not know what to say." He was talking about expenses. We were talking about human lives. And there's one more book excerpt, and this is even closer to home. Donald, this is from your book. Donald took a second as if he was thinking, and this was about your own son. And Donald took a second and as if he was thinking about the whole situation. "I don't know," he finally said, letting out a sigh. "He doesn't recognize you. Maybe you should just let him die," and moved down to Florida. That is as callous as it gets. That is as ugly as it gets. What was your relationship to him after that? And I don't even know, just express your thoughts on that if you could.
Well, I mean, it's hard to explain how someone could say that about any human being, least of all his grandnephew. The interesting part, Joy, is that Donald never met William. So he didn't know or understand the inspiration William has been to so many people. So heartless is certainly a way to describe it, but that unfortunately is what I think we're seeing Donald has morphed into over the years. Interesting to go back to the Oval Office story. We were in fact talking about better efficiencies in advocating for the complex disability community, meaning in efficiency, spending less and getting more for it. So that he brought up expenses was a little surprising to me.
Yeah. There is evidence that Donald Trump has a sort of revulsion toward disabled people. He didn't want to, be near Bob Dole, who had a disability from being a war hero. He made fun of and mocked a disabled reporter. Is that it? He just really is just disgusted by people who are disabled?
He does not have an affinity for folks that he deems to be lesser than him. And I think we're seeing that not just with disabled, any group of people that he feels below him. And as I've been saying, he will use them, people, as pawns and then cast them aside when he gets the goal that he's trying to achieve.
That's when I smack the shit out you. I smack the shit out. That's when.
But you report in your book that he is.
And then cast them aside when he killed any group of people that he feels below him. And as I've been saying, he will use them, people, as pawns and then cast them aside when he gets the goal that he's trying to achieve. As I've been saying, he will use them, people, as pawns and then cast them aside when he gets the goal that he's trying to achieve.
Does that include black people? Because he's pretending he would like to appeal to the African American community, but you report in your book that
when he gets the goal to achieve.
Does that include
achieve?
Appeal to the African American community, but people, because he's pretending he would like to appeal.
Achieve.
Does that include black people? Because he's pretending he would like to appeal to the African American community, but you report in your book that he is not unfamiliar with dropping the N-bomb and with the hard R.
Yeah, you're referring to a situation back when I was.
That's when I smack the shit out you. I smack the shit out. That's when.
Eldorado Cadillac, and I was there, and I heard him say the N-word twice. And what shocked me, other than the word, was the fact that he did not know who, in fact, slashed his roof. So he just assumed that it was somebody who was black.
You have announced that you are supporting Vice President Kamala Harris for president. Did you vote for your uncle when he ran in 2016 and 2020? And why are you supporting Vice President Harris now?
I did not vote for Donald. And the reason why is I believe in policy over politics. The policies of the Republican Party, or what they have turned into, is antithetical to what I believe. I am supporting Vice President Harris. I am going to vote for her. I will campaign for her if asked. Her policies are what I believe in. I am supporting Vice President Harris.
That's Donald Trump's nephew, and he is saying he will support Kamala Harris.
I am going to vote for her. I will campaign for her if asked. Her policies are what I believe in. I think, and this is not hyperbole, this is freedom on the line. She will move freedoms forward, everything that we, up until recently, have cherished in this country. The policies of the Republican Party are going to drive us backwards, and that's a scary place to be. She also, and I am confident in this, will help lead the charge to advocate for people with complex disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
She recently gave an interview with a disabled person, and the empathy that she just showed, her ability to listen, her ability to communicate with them. I just can't imagine Donald Trump doing that. I guess my final question to you is, do you believe that, a lot of people find your uncle distasteful, cruel, mean? You can throw a lot of, sort of adjectives around. Do you think he's dangerous?
I think some of his thoughts and actions are not physically dangerous. I think they are dangerous for this country and could do great harm to it. In 2028. Dangerous. I think they are dangerous for this country and could do great harm to it.
And if he became president, do you believe he would leave office ever?
He would continue on. And as I've said, even if he loses this time, which he will never accept, he would run again in 2028.
He will keep trying. And do you think that's fear of going to prison? Or do you think it's just a quest for power, lust for power?
I don't have an answer for your first question. I just think it's he doesn't like to lose. He hates to lose. There's nothing.